Hi, welcome back to my channel, Reclaim with Dr. David. It's so good to be here today. And a privilege, it is a privilege for me to be able to share my story with you. As I said in my previous episode, in my previous video, that this is going to be the first episode, and this is going to be focusing on my childhood. I call it my childhood before it was taken away. This to mean that my childhood is going to be in two parts. The first part is up to the age of 4, before everything changed. Before we get into that, I'm just going to tell you that it's going to be the first episode I said in the previous video, and I'm going to keep expanding on different topics as we go forward. But now we're going to start from age 0 to age 4. Let me introduce myself first. My name is David Irakoze. I'm a husband to a wonderful wife and a father to 4 children and soon to be 5. I have had a privilege to walk with God, experience His goodness, His power, and His faithfulness. I'm a medical doctor. I've had a privilege to work and practice medicine both in Africa and Europe, to be precise in the United Kingdom. I have had a pleasure of working in the public health arena as well. I was involved in different public health projects. And also in the ministry, in my church and other ministries, with a focus in young people and children. I have a passion to encourage, uplift and empower everyone, especially young people, to remind them that it is possible, to encourage them to allow God to use them at their full potential, to remind them that they have to disregard what they were told, that they could, what they were told that they could or could not do. So that's my passion. But I don't want to go into there. Let's get back into the topic. So I was born in a country called Burundi, just over three decades ago. A country that is in Central Eastern Africa, and it's bordered with the Republic, the DRC, so Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania, and Rwanda. It's a small country, and it's a country that has known trouble, a country that has known pain and sorrow. But it's also a country that is full of potential, a country of great culture and a great people. Hospitable people, very nice people. I was born in a small village, surrounded by trees and fields, in a small house, but a very nice house. I remember we had red flooring, which was seen as luxury during that time. Red flooring, and it was a nice house. It was my father and my mother and my 2 siblings and I. So it was the 3 of us, or should I say 4 of us. That I will explain a little bit later. But let's say, so it was the 3 of us, 3 children. And also we lived with my uncle. My uncle lived with us as my father grew up as an orphan, and so he had to look after his siblings. And so when he got married, his youngest brother was still living with him. And so that's how I was born, when my uncle was living with us, with my mom. One of my best memories is when I used to play with my sisters. So my older sister would be a mother, and I would play as my dad, and my youngest sister would be a child. And I remember pretending that I'm going to work, and I would come back and I would give them treats. I would give her treats. So my younger sister would be like our child. So I remember playing with them behind the house, and it was wonderful. I remember playing with my cousins and in the field, running, climbing trees, and just having fun. So this up to the age of 4, remember. But I thank God that from that time, even though I was young, I still remember things as if they happened yesterday. So we had a wonderful childhood, and then something happened. My mother had a baby. It was wonderful. So now it was the four of us. Now you know why I said the four of us. My life was about playing, going to church. We were brought up in a Christian family, and just having fun as a kid. But one day, so my mother had a baby, and about 3 days later, something happened. My dad was not at home, and something that changed my life, and the life of everyone around me. We were just playing outside. My mom had finished giving us a shower. We saw people running past our house, screaming, "Get out of here! Get out of here!" My dad was not at home. My mom panicked. She told us, "Let's go, run." She didn't take anything with her. Remember, she had just had a baby, about 3 days old. In our tradition in Burundi, we carry babies on the back. But you cannot do that when they're that young, because of the umbilical cord is still fresh. And if you put them on their back, it would cause a lot of discomfort, and later on a lot of problems on the umbilical cord, and it can cause a lot of complications anyway. So we don't carry babies that young on the back. So my mother had to carry the baby in her arm. And remember, she's the fourth now. So we have myself, my two other sisters, and the baby. We start running. As we ran, I remember running with my father, my mom, and us. And we saw gunshots going, like being shot at. I remember seeing someone get shot in front of me. It's like that. They get shot. They're on the floor, shot dead. My mother, she was frozen. She couldn't walk. At one point, we were running. She had the baby, and the three of us around her, we couldn't run. At one point, she told us to stop. She couldn't talk. She couldn't do anything. She was like frozen. And the gunshots kept going on. Shootings around us. Hundreds and hundreds of people running across us. So I'm talking about we're running through the fields. It was a rice field. And my mom told me, "Run." Yeah. She told me, "Run. I'll find you. Follow those people." She told my sister, so my older sister, to run. She couldn't walk. It's like it was like a panic attack. She couldn't walk, she couldn't move, she just held the baby like that. And my younger sister, who was around the age of 2, she was too young to run on her own. So she stayed with my mom, and my sister and myself, we started running. We ran and ran, just following the strangers wherever they were going. That day changed the course of my life. I remember turning back as a 4 years old, looking at my mom. She's frozen. I'm running forward with my sister, who was around age of 6 then. And you're just wondering what's going to happen. But I praise the Lord that He used these tragic events and molded me into a person that I am today. God is wonderful in all His ways. He uses what is bad and turns them into the best thing you could ever hope for. In my next episode, I'll talk about what happened next. But to conclude, this first episode is that I had an amazing childhood, raised in a Christian family, in a wonderful country, peaceful country. But that day, when the war started, everything changed. And God bless you. I look forward to talking to you in the next episode. But I'll be talking about what happened to my mother, what happened to the baby, and where did we run to, and what happened to us, myself and my sister. May God bless you. I'll catch you in the next one. Hello and welcome back to my channel, Reclaim with Dr. David. It's so good to have you today. As you know, we are kicking off with second episode of my life story. And today we're doing part 2 of my childhood. As I said previously, we talked up to the age of 4, when everything was fine, everything was going well. I was in a peaceful neighborhood where I could run wherever I want, climb trees, play with anything, and just feel, like a kid. But then a day came that changed everything. On that day, we ran away from our home. On that day, we left everything behind. Everything behind. We could not take clothes, we could not take anything. My mother, my 3 siblings, one of them was a newborn. We went on a run. We started running away from our home and never to come back until over a decade later. We never saw that house again. We never came back to that neighborhood again until over a decade. So welcome back. And if you are new, please subscribe to this channel and also share the video so that we can reach more people. I believe God is going to use this story. I believe that God is going to use my story to show that anything is possible. All things are possible for those who believe. So now, at this stage from the previous episode, so now we are at the stage where we are running. My mother told myself and my older sister to start running and follow the strangers, follow those people. My mom said, follow those people and I will find you. And then she was frozen in a panic attack, holding a newborn baby with my little sister next to her. She couldn't move. Meanwhile, we're turning around, looking at her and thinking, should we just keep going? Should we stay with with our mother? What should we do? But then my mother kept telling us, just run, just run. Bullets flying on top of our heads, witnessing people get, shot in front of our eyes. It was tough. While my mother was confused, standing still, while crowds of people running past her, something miraculous happened. Remember in my previous video, I told you that I lived with my uncle, my dad's brother, who is the youngest of the family. As I said, my dad grew up as an orphan, so he grew up with he had to look after his siblings. So when we ran away from the house, my uncle, we forgot to wake him up. He was sleeping, he was having a nap in the afternoon. So we forgot to wake him up. And then, luckily, I don't know how, I can't remember in what context, but he woke up. And to hear bullets and guns, and then open the door and start running and following people. And eventually he saw my mom at a distance, standing still with a newborn and a child, and my sister next to her. And he came running fast and he grabbed my little sister and just kept running and told my mom, come, let's run. And then she kind of woke up from that confusion and started running with a newborn in her hand. Now she didn't have to worry for the other child, my other sister. Then we started running and running and running. Myself and my sister were already separated from my mother, and we found nice, good people who had, so when we arrived, we were in the middle of the field, out of nowhere, no houses, nothing. And people started building small shelters to stay in for the night. And we were sleeping on the grass. And yeah, there were people there who were really, really kind to us. And my mom came trying to find us, so she actually eventually found us, myself and my sister. Now we are reunited as a family. But when we were trying to rest, and then things changed, we had to run from that particular area, going up on the mountains. Or they told us that up on the mountains were safer. So we went up the mountains, and there were some relatives that we had there. So we stayed there for a night. For a couple of days we were there, and things were a little bit calm. Now, you're probably asking yourself, why were you running? Why were those shooting? What really happened that caused you to leave your home? What was happening? In 1993, on the 21st of October, the president of my country was assassinated. And he was the first democratically elected president ever in my country. He had been on power for about 3 months, and then he was killed. So when he was assassinated, that triggered a civil war in my country, and that's the beginning of what I've been talking about. This war, my friend, changed everything. I'm not going to go into politics of why and what and why the assassination and everything. But let's stay on the story, my story. So we stayed on that mountain, and it was cold. We had cold nights. Sleeping in the fields. There's no blanket. There's nothing. You are being bitten by mosquitoes. Struggling to get food. It was tough. But remember, my father was not with us. Where was he? Before the war started, my father was not at home. And we were separated that way. So now we didn't know where he was. He didn't know where we were. So he started searching for us. Because he was away from the area where we lived in, so he came back trying to find where we ran from, where we ran to. And he found some soldiers and there. And he asked them, where the people who lived in this area, where did they go? Do you have any idea of where they ran to, in what direction? So fortunately, these soldiers, they told him, why are you doing this? Why are you looking for? This is a dangerous area. You can't enter it. And he said, I need to find my family. I've got children and a wife, and I don't know where they are. And this is where we lived. And I said, no, you can't enter. You cannot enter. And he saw a lot of, bodies on the floor, on the street, and it was just terrible. So he was walking through that. We'll come on that later. But people who were killed, they were still there on the street. So that's what my dad was telling us about when he came to look for us. So he came and looked for us, and they told him, so the people who lived here, they ran toward that direction. So he went, kept walking, looking and searching where we were. This was an era where there was no telephones. This was an era where there is no internet. So it was very, very difficult. So we go, eventually my father found us. It was amazing to see him again, and for him to see us, to finally find us. We stayed in that area, and then the war broke again where on the mountains where we were. So we had to move again. Things got worse, and we realized that it was not safe to stay in the country. We stayed on the run. So now it's time to go to Tanzania. Remember, I was born in Burundi, and Burundi we share borders with Tanzania. So we took the boat, went to a place called Kigoma. We went to Kigoma. That's in Tanzania. When we went there, now we're going somewhere that we don't know, and we don't have any relatives there, but we just know it's safe for us. It's better for us to leave the country. We had lost everything. Remember, we left the house with nothing, no clothes, nothing. We only have one pair of clothes that we're wearing. So eventually, we stayed in Kigoma, and we found a local church that supported us. My father, he was very involved into evangelism and preaching, so they asked him to preach in that church. And once he preached, the church liked us, liked him, and they actually offered us a home. And we lived there for some months. We stayed there. We had good people around us, but we were not in our country. My dad has left his job, and they were looking for him, which raised a lot of questions. In that time, because he left the country, he was being accused of other things, of being involved with, with what was happening in the country. So it was almost impossible for him to ever come back to his old job, even if things were getting better. It was going to get better. So we stayed there in Kigoma until when my mother got sick. She got very, very sick. Another tragic event was about to unfold. My mother was very sick, to the point that she was on a deathbed. She told us what I would call a farewell, saying that she knows that she's not going to make it. She'll never go back to Burundi, but we have to move on our own. She told my father, things like, look after the kids, all these things. And it was difficult. She just said, I know, I can feel that I'm dying. And my father was like, no, this cannot happen. He started praying and praying and praying. Well, there were people who were telling us that there's a possible that she was poisoned, or maybe some sort of witchcraft going on. They gave her medication and everything was not working. So she just went in the house, and so after she had talked to us to talk to my father, he has strong faith. That's one thing I know about him. He believes in impossibles. So he started praying, and he asked. There were people who were visiting, coming in to see my mother, who was very sick. And my dad asked everyone to leave, and so he can have his time with my mother. And then he started praying and praying and praying for hours. Prayed and prayed and prayed. And eventually, God saved my mother. We don't know how, but God saved her. The next morning, she was fully recovered, completely recovered. We thank God for that. She didn't take any medication, just miraculously, she was made well. And then she said she wants to go back to Burundi. Now she said, if I die, I would rather die in my country. I don't want to die in a foreign country. So she told my dad, and my dad said, okay, we'll go back. So now we're going back to a country that we know there's war going on. And the place where I lived was where the war was intensified in that region. It was the most dangerous area to enter. So when we came back, we could not go back to where we lived. So now we came back in the country, and remember, we are still just children. At that time, I was probably around the age of 5 or 6. When we arrived in Burundi, we could not stay. It was too dangerous. I'll go into details of what really happened on a daily basis. We lived a different kind of life, not an ordinary kind of life. Yeah, you'd expect to see things change any minute. We lived with our things packed. In the house where we lived in, everything was packed because we knew we could leave anytime. So I grew up in that kind of condition where you don't trust anything. We could be eating and gunshots start and people running, and that would be it. We just carry the luggages, whatever that we have, put it on the head, and then run and carry everything that we can carry. And usually we would not come back to that area because it will be then occupied by the armed forces, and it will be just, done. and we would just not come back to that area usually. So I lived in that kind of life. So when we came back from Tanzania, it became obvious that we would not stay in Burundi. So my dad, us as a family, we decided to go to Congo, DRC, so the Democratic Republic of Congo. So now we moved to work into another country. In this country, things got better for a little while. We joined the local church there. My dad continued the work in the ministry. So many things happened. A lot of tragic events. Some of them that affected my life tremendously. So we were in Congo, and my dad and my mom would try to find things, food. And there was no jobs. We would depend on the UNHCR help. They would bring trucks of food, and we would line up, and we'd be offered small sacks for food, or small small bags of food, and then each family, depending on how many children you have and so on. So that's how we lived. And eventually we moved into instead of living in a refugee camp, we moved into a small neighborhood. And I remember as a child being bullied because I was Burundian, and by the Congolese kids. I've got nothing bad about. I've got no bitterness for the Congolese people. They're amazing people. Yeah, but I just got to say, when I was a child, I was bullied a lot because we were refugees, and they were saying that, oh, these refugee kids. But I'll be told by other kids, like, these refugee kids, they just come here to take everything, and they I'm not gonna say everything, but nasty words, and even adults, they would just mistreat us because we were refugees, but God taught me a lot during this journey. I'm just going to tell you that God told me why I should trust Him and how He will always come to my rescue. Up to this time, when I'm thinking about what we're going through, it reminds me of King David. In the book of Psalms, though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. I will fear no evil. Why? Because the Lord, my God, is with me. And my father always reminded us of that. We pray together, we read the Bible, and my mother would be there as well. And we encourage us, and they will guide us into trusting and having faith that everything will be okay. That God will make things right at the right time. So growing up as the oldest son came with a cost. What other kids had, the son talking about being bullied. Why other kids would have brothers who would come to their rescue. For me, I was the older brother. At this time, my mom had another child who was a son. But you can imagine, so the first child is a girl, and the second, I'm a boy, and then two girls after me. So obviously, I was surrounded by girls, and I would not ask the girls to come to my rescue. You know what I mean? So yeah, whenever I would find myself into a tricky situation with my friends or people trying to, bully me and things, I had to defend myself. And that, I think, developed in me a sense of self-esteem and resilience, knowing that I can trust God by my side. If it's just me and God, it's a full team. We don't need anybody else. It's nice to have others on board, but if you ever find yourself on your own, just remember that God is with you. And if there is nobody else, that's enough. With God at your side, all things are possible. Okay, so at this stage, we are in Congo. Things are tricky. We don't have enough food. We can go by without eating, relying on the refugee help, from different NGOs we had to rely on the help from different organizations that were coming to provide food for the refugees. I remember one day I just got sick from eating the same food every single day. And one of the food was lentils. I like lentils, but they have memories behind that. So we ate lentils like for days. And I asked my dad, like, why can't we eat something else? And I remember my dad taking time and prayed with me, and he said, God is going to provide. What do you want? I said, I would like some meat or something different. And my dad said, God is going to provide that for that. And I remember that's one of the best memories in my childhood, is that my parents never told me that anything was impossible. They just told me it's about waiting. Just wait. On the right time, God will provide. Excuse me. Yes. So I'll end this episode saying that now I was a refugee kid, away from my family, away from my neighborhood, away from the place I grew up, away from my family. I'm talking about extended family. I'm talking about uncles and cousins and all these kind of things. So we're just refugees. And then I had to survive as a boy, survive as a refugee with my parents, and also to trust God that everything's gonna be okay. But this was just a beginning. There were more tragic things that were coming. There were more tragic events that were about to unfold, and we get into that in the next episode. I'll be talking about another war. So we thought we left the country of war, not knowing that we're heading towards the worst war ever. Deadly. Was deadly, was bad. This is the time where I saw things that would be difficult to talk out loud as a child. This is the season where a child sees things that the parent would not want them to see. It's war. We'll be talking about in the next episode about another family separation, losing each other, and this was the worst war than the previous one. Thank you for listening to me. My purpose, remember, for sharing my story, it's not because I'm the only one who's gone through these kind of things, but it's because there's power in sharing stories. There's power in talking about the wonders and miracles that God has done. As we progress, we'll talk about different things that I believe will uplift your faith. If God can take me from that, if God can take me from living in a way that I'm going to discuss in the next episode that is terrifying even to hear, and extreme poverty, living in the war zone, always witnessing things that you really should not witness as a child. But God protected me and brought me to where I am today. Hello, welcome back to my channel, Reclaim with Dr. David, and thank you for tuning in. I'm so happy that now we are on episode number 3. And the episode number 3, now I'm in DRC Congo. As a little kid, away from my family, extended family, uncles and cousins, away from my familiar neighborhood. Now I'm in a different country, different culture, different language. Now, it wasn't easy. When you were a refugee, you're supposed to be in a refuge, and a refuge should be a safe area, a safe place. But for us, it was different from that. Things were about to change in a different direction. A lot of things happened, but I thank God that despite all the difficulties and challenges, we are here today. I'm here today to testify that God is able. That God is able. So now we were in DRC Congo. It was myself, my siblings, and my parents. And eventually, later on, we were joined by my two uncles, one on my mother's side and my uncle on my father's side, so my dad's brother. We're also joined by my auntie, who's my mother's sister. Now we are a little family in a foreign land. It was difficult. First, difficult to get food. My parents would do different kind of jobs, to be able to provide for us. But I know that we relied a lot on, help and support from NGOs that help refugees, and we used to queue and get food from UNHCR, truck. They give us like small bags of food and things like that. And it was a bit tough. It was quite difficult. It wasn't just a bit. It was very difficult, to be honest. But now, as a child, I remember that one day there were two kids who were bullying me. People called me a refugee kid, and because we didn't have a radio, at that time it was a different time. There was no internet, there was no phones, but most of all, there was no. I don't even remember seeing the TV then. It was a different kind of place, so we didn't even own a radio. But I loved music so much. So what I would do, I would listen. If I hear music, when one of our neighbors, playing music, I used to go and listen, and I would dance and so on. Yeah, and at one point, my parents they concluded that if they can't see me, they can't find me around. They'll just listen to music, and if they can hear music somewhere, they know they will go and find me there. So I still love music. I still love music so much. Anyways, so now there were these two kids who were trying to bully me. Now, I didn't have a big brother. I had an older sister and two younger sisters, and a very young brother who needed my protection instead of me asking for protection. So as myself, having a big brother, you can imagine managing the challenges of people who are trying to bully you and things. So these two kids who tried to do that, they didn't just abuse me verbally. They tried to beat me up, and I remember that they started beating me up, and I started fighting back and fighting back and fighting back, and eventually I wouldn't back down. I just kept fighting, and they beat me. I kept fighting and screaming and fighting until the kids they got scared and started running away. They're like, this boy, we are beating him, but he's not. He's not backing down. He's not even trying to run away. So I fought with them, and then, by the way, those who know me, that I don't advocate for, fighting. I believe that there's numerous ways to be able to resolve conflict, without having to fight. But these kids, they were attacking me, so I fought until then. They started running away, so I went after them, and I was screaming, angry, and I kept running. So they ran, and then they ran into their house. They closed the door, and I stayed outside, crying and screaming and waiting for them. And then eventually, I calmed myself down, and I sat next to their door. And their parents were like, "Do you want to go home?" I said, "No, they need to come out. We need to fight. I'm not going home until we fight." And then my mother came, and I remember that day, my mom, that's when she had a serious conversation with me regarding war. And she said, "You are growing up. and I know that there's been so much that's been going bad. I want you to be careful. And she referred to people who were doing bad things in my country. She said, don't be like those people back home who are killing each other. Don't be like that person. And she said, you need to control your anger. I remember that time I used to be very, very angry. She said, you need to control your anger. Now, I said that we have been joined by, uncles, 2 uncles and an auntie. But there was one person who had joined us as well. Someone who was a very good friend of mine. That's my grandfather. So on my mother's side, so my mom's father. So he called me. But I remember he used to go and sit. He used to have, this wooden foldable chairs that you fold and open like that. And he used to have that kind of chair, and he would go and put it in front of the house and just relaxing and sitting in there. And I used to go and he would talk to me, tell me different things. So he called me and he said, you need to know how to control yourself. He told me many things. I'm sorry, when I'm talking about my granddad, yeah. So he started telling me that he wants to see me grow up to be a person of value. And he told me about education. He said there are kids out here who are playing on the street and doing bad things. But he said, you need to focus. Sorry. When I'm talking about my grandfather, it's different. I wish that he had lived a little bit longer, but unfortunately, these were the times toward the end of his life. By the way, my grandfather was a very good man. He was a very strong person of good character and morals. And he had survived a lot of wars before this one. In 1972, there was a war in Burundi. Basically, it was one ethnic group trying to kill the elite of the other ethnic group. And so my father was one of the people that were being hunted down, and he fled to Rwanda and then came back after a few years. So he's a man who had seen war. He's a man who have survived so many attempts, people trying to kill him. And so now he is in DRC Congo with us. He sat with me. He told me a lot of things that up to today I believe where I am today, especially with the focus that I had and determination and education, that he had a very big role in my achievement. And that's one thing that blows my mind. I was about 6 years old then. And I feel like it was like yesterday. And this man who spent just not a long time considering my life, but had a big, tremendous impact. And the words that he told me, he would say, you need to focus and become a real man. And we talk a lot about education. We talk about, not doing what other kids are doing. That would lead me in the wrong path. Growing up in war as a boy, there is so many temptations. As you grow up, you can be pulled by so many things that can interrupt any kind of progression, education, or anything like that. I know many of my friends who never even finished primary school. because they got involved in wrong groups, in wrong things. And for me, I feel like my grandfather, the time that he spent with me, was so powerful. I don't know how he did it, but the words that he told me kept on up to today. They're still living in me. Anyways, sorry. Sorry. So he spent time and talked to me, gave me advice. My father gave me a lot of advice. My mother gave me a lot of advice. But there was something different about my grandfather. Okay, so these were towards the end of his life, and he had type 2 diabetes. I think it was type 2 diabetes. I know that he had diabetes. I don't know exactly if it was type 1 or type 2, but I think it was type 2 diabetes. And now he's a refugee person. There was not a lot of support in terms of, medication and the dietary requirement, food and things that he had to do, food sugar control, things like that. And sometimes I wish that he would have lived a little bit longer to see the seed I planted in me, and how, it's and where I am today. From that boy to where I am today, I wish he was here so he could see. So anyways, so my granddad he got sick. But there's something that I thank God about, is that towards the end of his life, he received Jesus as the Lord and Savior of his life. He gave his life to God, became a Christian, he got baptized. And for me, so that is amazing. That is a blessing for me, and to know that God allowed that to happen. Anyway, so he went to Burundi for treatments and things. And I'm sorry. So when I'm talking about my granddad, it's hard for me not to get. It's the one thing that makes me emotional, and yeah. So he said goodbye. He went to Burundi. We were in DRC Congo, and he never returned. Someone told us, the week we were informed that he passed away. It was very difficult for my mother. We didn't get to go to the funeral. We were in Congo. We didn't get to go to the funeral, and even if we were able to, even if it was safe, there was issues with tickets and things. But also the country was not safe to travel. So anyways, so he passed away. It was difficult for my mother, and I remember watching her cry. But for me, I came to realize the impact they had done for me as I progressed. The memories of my time, the memories of my time with him and the time that I spent with him remained vivid, remained alive. And I was just determined. I had determination. With the background that I have in my family, on my father's side, I was the first person to ever finish high school. I was the first person. So, and from that to where I am today, all my achievement, I know that he contributed so much. But I thank God that he used his last time alive in a way that I cannot explain. Simple time that he used to spend with me, but yet profound and impactful, that still today has a big impact in me. Okay. Now, sorry, I'm trying to focus. So my granddad, that was the end. We never saw him again. Now we stayed in Congo. and it was a big shock for us, big shock for me. He was like a friend and a close, not just a friend, there was something about him that I cannot explain. So then we stayed in Congo. While we stayed in Congo, we struggled with extreme poverty, struggling with food. And I remember at one point we were eating the same food, same food. Like I mentioned previously, lentil. We ate lentil like I don't know how many days, almost every day. We had the same food for days, and then I remember telling my father, why can't you eat something different? And he would say, come and pray with me. And he said, trust God, he will provide on the right time. He'd never say that something is not possible, we don't have money, this is not going to happen. No, my father always planted a seed in me of faith. He is a man of a strong faith, and I feel I'm so very grateful for that. So we struggled a lot in Congo, but something very, very tragic was about to happen. Now we had lost my granddad, and I thought maybe if we had enough healthcare, people who like medication and things that would help him, I feel like maybe he would have lived a little bit longer. But as a refugee, there's limited resources, and there was not enough to help him with his diabetes. And so anyways, and I know that everything happens for a reason. If God allows something to happen, so there's a reason. And that's just my wish, my wish that he would have stayed longer, at least to see my progress, to see the seed that he planted in me, how far it got me. And anyways, so that's one of the tragic things that happened, that we lost my grandfather. And then a few months later, something very bad happened again. So we moved to DRC, running away from war in Burundi. Yet we didn't know that something worse was about to happen in the country that we ran to. As I said at the beginning, when you're a refugee, you're supposed to be in the refuge where it's safe, but it wasn't safe for us. Now things changed from bad to worse. A war broke. A war started in Congo while we were there as refugees. Now, where do you go? When you're in the country that is supposed to be where you are called a refugee, and now the country is at war. That was the time of a man called Mobutu Sese Seko. This was the guy who ruled Zaire, DRC. By the time I was about 6 years old, as I said, about 6-7 years old, and sorry. I didn't expect this episode to be like this, but okay. So I was about 7 years old, and I can remember things as if it happened yesterday. Now he died. When he died, everything changed in that country, and the war started. I'll talk about this in my next episode. I had planned for this episode to include the war in DRC and how we survived, but I guess my granddad story took over the whole time, and I don't regret that. He deserved to my gratefulness. He deserves my appreciation for the little time that he had with me as a grandson, and the amount of impact that he did. And so this episode is actually, as far as I'm concerned, is mainly about him I didn't plan it, but mainly about him. And it's just that the lesson for me is just how much impact you can do with a small, a very so-called, small action, like a short time that you can spend with someone and just change the course of their lives. God can use you with whatever that you have. And now I'm thinking about people who are told, I'm a medical doctor, and sometimes patients will be told, you have a few days, you have a few months to live, this is going this way. And now I'm thinking, I didn't think about this before, but I'm thinking there is hope. Let's live today as if it was the last day of our lives and use time efficiently. Even if you don't think that you've got a long time to live, the time you have can make great impact into someone. You can totally change someone. My granddad didn't have a long time with me, but yeah, God bless you. And if you're new, please subscribe or share the video. My aim is that my story will bring hope to you or to anyone who is going through difficulties. They think that their life is over. They don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I wish that my granddad would see me as that boy, that refugee boy in DRC, and me being here. It's a big contrast. There's a big contrast, huge contrast. You could not compare. But yet, he believed and he spoke in the word into me, and they bear fruit. So I'll just end this episode now, but thank you for tuning in. Thank you for spending time with me. I'll see you in the next one. I'll be talking about how the war broke in the RC while we were there, and how we saw the worst war, that the war was actually worse than the one we had survived previously, but that God remained faithful. God remained at our side. He protected us, not just physically, but I believe He protected me, even spiritually and emotionally, and I'll explain that in my next episode. God bless you. Hello and welcome back to my channel, Reclaiming Dr. David. How are you guys doing? So good to have you back here, and I'm so pleased. Now we are on episode number 4. Yes, number 4. And today, on my previous video, remember I talked about the event that was going to happen in DRC Congo when I was there as a child, as a refugee. And I said there's a lot of bad things that happened. As a refugee, there's extreme poverty. Healthcare. There's no healthcare at all, and going by days without eating, or things like a lot of challenges that we saw there. But one of the important event that shocked me, as I said previously, was the loss of my granddad, and I know the previous episode was not organized at all, but that's the way maybe it was supposed to go on. One of the things that shocked me was about my granddad, and then after that, a few months later, the war broke. So the president of DRC Congo died, and when he died, things changed. War started. We thought we had fled from Burundi, going to Congo, and then we'd be safe. And now we're about to witness something worse than what we have seen before, at least for myself as a child. Previously, we have had a prophecy. My dad was involved in a group of men who used to spend time with praying. They would spend a lot of time with God, and we'll receive a lot of prophetic insights and words from them. And one day we were told that the war was about to start in the country, but we are not to cross the border to go to Burundi, that we are to stay in the country. Now, where we were was not very far from the border, but the prophecy said that we would not run towards Burundi, but we would run towards wherever that we can go, but within the Democratic Republic of Congo, then called Zaire. The war started just like that, and then we had to run again, collect everything that we had, and go on the run again. This time, as I said, we were 5 siblings. The baby, who was the one who was then a baby during the first war in Burundi, when the war started in Burundi, now she was quite old. She was a bit older, so roughly about 3 years old, I would say. About 3 years old. And now we had my brother, who was roughly about a year old or so, or even younger. So now my dad carried my sister on the back, and my mom carried my brother on the back, and then the rest of us, the 3 of us, were on our feet running. We walked and walked and walked hours on end. I was exhausted and tired. I remember looking at my dad. He was carrying things on his head, and he managed to, I think one of the things he was carrying was a mattress and other luggages, and with a baby on his back. And my mom was the same. Then we kept running and running and running. We arrived somewhere that's like crowd, like a lot of people running together. We're running on the coast of Tanganyika. And then we arrived somewhere, we stopped. We had people built some shelters there. And then before we know it, the war found us there as well. Lots of shootings and things. And then we had to run again. Now, something else was going to happen in my family. We ran, and then before we knew it, my sister, who is right after me, so I'm second in the family, and she's third, so we lost her. Now we are searching everywhere, we couldn't find her. We kept running, and as we ran, we just kept calling her, and my mom would tell us, it was like a song, my mom would tell us, call her, just keep calling her name, she'll probably hear us. So when we reached where we were going to camp for the night, there was a lot of people around us. I remember there were a lot of mango trees and things around. So I remember, eating the mango from the trees because there was no food. There was nothing to eat from trees and things that were available for us in the area where we were hiding. And then we were all scared. They're like, did we lose her? Did she got killed? What happened? She was about 4 years old, between 4 and 5 years old. And she was about 5 years old, yeah. And we were just scared that we probably lost her and we never see her again. My mom was very, very concerned. She was crying, and my dad was like, we just keep looking. And we didn't see her that day. And then we ran out of water. I can't remember who went, if it was my mom or my dad, went down because we're near Tanganyika, the lake. So my mom or my dad, I can't remember who, went down on the lake to fetch some water. And then as she came back, she found her. Man, it was like a miracle. Like, when you have a sibling and you lose them and then you get them again. It was like that. There was this wonderful family that had found her, it's amazing. It's amazing really how, people, they didn't know her, but they saw that she was there. She didn't have any adults with her. She's crying, and then they just took her. And so they were kind of looking after her and things. And so we got her back. And now my mom and my dad, they were saying, when we are running, we need to stay close to each other. But there were crowds of people shooting and things. Like, how do you stay together? The 2 children are one on the back of my mom, one on my mom's back, and another on my dad, not on my dad's back, was carrying her on the side, like here, like wrapped her on himself. And so there were 3 of us who had to walk, and it was very, very tough. The legs were swelling, and I remember especially my dad, he was trying to he was using some of the material and clothes to wrap it around his feet, but his feet were swollen from walking, carrying things. So it was tough, it was difficult. We stayed there again, and then it happened again where we were. The war found us where we were. We had to run again. And now as we ran, we would see we had some time we had to run through bodies, dead bodies. I said earlier that we witnessed things that you would not want your child to see. And I remember my mom would try to hide my eyes, like doing that. But it wouldn't work. You are running, you are trying to save your own life. You are carrying things. You've got a baby on your back. How do you? So I would end up seeing all these things, and then we see just people who got shot. They're there. And one thing that struck me the most. Now things calmed down, and we thought things were getting better, so we tried to come back so that we can try to cross the border and go back to Burundi, because we're going farther and farther away into the jungles of the DRC. And when you get in the jungle, you can get lost very easily. There are other tragic stories that I would probably share later in these episodes if the concerned allow me to do so. If the ones who are concerned allowed me to share the stories, I will. I know people who lost their parents, who lost their siblings, who got lost in the jungle, and they had to be found by helicopters like the UN had sent, and things like to find refugees in the jungle in Congo. So my parents, they said, if we keep going, we're gonna get lost. We just keep going. We don't know where we're going. So as we turned back, then we were stopped by this armed group, and they told us to give them money. So they told my dad, give them money. At that time, we didn't have anything, and they told my dad, give us money or we will kill you. And my dad, we are there, children standing, and I'm there listening, and I'm like, these guys are serious. And my dad, that's one of my best memories of him, how he showed bravery, but also how he showed faith, the faith that he has in God, the unwavering faith in God. I think for me, when you have your parents and you have a moment when you see them like as superheroes, like for me, that's the picture that is still in my mind. I still remember vividly what happened that day. My father reached in the bag, in the suitcase, or like some sort of suitcase, a bag they were carrying things in, and he pulled out the Bible, and he told them with confidence, because at then they were trying to shoot him. He said, I have one treasure, the most precious thing that I have here. I don't have money, I don't have anything to give you for you to spare our lives, but I have one thing that is the most precious to me. And he reached in his bag and he pulled out the Bible. I still remember he got the Bible out, and they're like, what, are you crazy? We ask you for money, you bring the Bible. And I remember my dad being, I still don't understand, but that is very, very difficult to do. It reminds me of the time of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when they were asked to bow down, to worship. Excuse me. King Nebuchadnezzar statue that was built, and they said, we will not bow down. We will not bow down to the idol. We know the God we believe in. We know the God we have put faith in. We know Him. He's faithful. He's all powerful. He's loving. He's our God, and we will not bow to anybody else but Him. So I saw that bravery in him. So I took the Bible and I told him, okay, you are joking with us, yeah? Okay. They gave him a few minutes. You need to say goodbye to your family now because we're going to kill you. He said, we're going to let your family leave, but we will kill you. So they told my dad. So he said goodbye to us. Now you're thinking, I don't know why. I mean, some of my siblings, they tend to not remember some of these details, and my mother would ask me, how can you still remember these things? I don't know, but I believe that God will preserve these memories in me so that today I can share them, to be able to encourage people, to be able to tell people of His goodness, His power, and He's worthy of our worship. He's worthy of devotion, even in the middle of the uncertainty. So yeah, I still remember this as if it happened yesterday. So my father said goodbye to all of us, and they said, everyone stand by. So they told all of us, so my mother and my 4 other siblings and myself, to stand to the side, and they told my dad to go and stand in the grass away from us. So he said goodbye to us, and then he went holding the Bible like this in the air, and he stood in the grass away from us and held it like that. And they told him, so we're going to shoot you now. And they charged the gun ready to shoot, and we knew that we're going to, it was over for my family. It was over. And now how do you go on? My mother with 5 children, without a husband, how would we ever get back to Burundi? How would we ever get out of this jungle place where you need a man who can carry things, and now she's there with 5 children, and the husband is about to be shot. Earlier, before that happened, remember I said we walked through dead bodies. We walked through. I saw this. Earlier, before that happened, I had seen something that was... I remember my mom reaching out to cover my face as we walked past. We were welcomed by flies and a very, very bad smell on the small street small path that we're walking by. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this out loud, but you can imagine what I'm trying to say. People had been shot earlier. They are lying there. So as we walked, we were welcomed by flies, so many flies, and a very bad smell. Imagine what I saw. And that's the things that we saw everywhere. Now I'm thinking my dad is going to be like that. So my dad is standing there, and we are just, wondering what's going to happen next. But God is faithful. God is so faithful. As they charged the gun, they're going to shoot him, and my sister, the one after me, ran to the guy, and God used her to save my father's life. Hello, welcome back to my channel, Reclaim with Dr. David. I thank you and appreciate your time for tuning in with us. And I'm very, very glad that today we are kicking off with episode number 6 of my story. Previously, we stopped at the point where my family were stopped by this group of armed men and who were asking for money. We were in the middle of the war in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We had run from Burundi from war, running away from the war in Burundi. And little did we know that we were actually going towards the worst war. So now we're in the middle of chaos, middle of the war. As we ran and ran, we came across a lot of people who were going the same direction as us. All that we could hear were guns, screaming, crying, pain, people calling their relatives, those who could not find their loved ones. People got lost from each other. It was tough. As we ran, we came across this place where we thought would be the good place for us to stop for a few minutes and get rest, like a shelter. At this point, my dad's feet were swollen. He had been running, carrying my sister on the back because she was too young to run, and a lot of luggages, suitcases, and a mattress on his head. My mother was so exhausted. She was carrying my brother, who was the youngest of the family, and a lot of luggages on her head as well. Myself and my two sisters on the run. So we came across this place, and we thought it would be a good place for us to stop and take some rest. It doesn't mean that the guns had stopped. We could still hear gunshots, screaming, all around. So as we approached this place, we were welcomed by flies and a very bad smell. My mom reached out to close my eyes, but it was too late. I think I've talked about one of these events previously in my videos, in the previous episode. It happened again. So, people who got shot dead, and were left there, nobody to bury them after days. It was tough. These are things that you would not want your children to see. No parent would ever want their children to see these things. But it was too late. And then we said, we can't stop here, we need to keep going. Kept running. And then we reached the point where we were stopped by a group of men who were carrying guns. They told us to stop, and they told my father to give them money, and then they would let us go. We didn't have money, and my father told them, I don't have any money. Tried to apologize and say, please let us go. And then they said, okay, give us something that we can sell, at least something that we can use to get money. And my father reached in the suitcase and pulled out something they did not expect. It was a Bible. And boldly my dad declared, this is the most precious thing I have here. They were very offended by that. They asked, what are we going to do with this? What's the point? What are we going to do with this Bible? It's a book. We asked for something that we can use, that we can sell to get money. They got very, very angry. And they said, say goodbye to your family. You will not see them again. You will never see them again. They told us to say goodbye to him because we will never see him again. Now, a little boy, I'm standing there watching. See, I remember these things like as if it happened yesterday. I can still see clearly my dad, ourselves, and this man on the other side, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees and grass, and all we could hear just gunshots, screaming and pain. So I'm thinking, what's gonna happen to my father? My dad came and said goodbye to us, and they told us, stand aside. They put us to one side, and they told my dad to walk. He walked up to a few meters, then they asked him to stop in the grass, in the middle of the grass, and they told him, we're going to kill you now. He left his Bible like this boldly. It was tough, but he left his Bible like this, and they charged the gun. As they charged the gun, getting ready to shoot, something we did not expect happened. My mother and all of us as kids, frightened. God used somebody that we would never think that he could use to save someone's life. My little sister was about 5 then, 5 years old. She screamed, cried. Just before the guy shot my dad, she ran, and grabbed the gun and pulled and screamed and said, let my dad go. Just let my dad go, let my dad go. Hold the gun. All of us were scared, and God used someone as little as 5 years old who showed bravery during that time and saved my dad's life. The guy was confused, looked at my sister, didn't know what to do. Just go, just leave, go. And then we left. It was like, what just happened? Everything that I saw, I thank God that he protected my soul. He protected my mind. It's things that I don't comprehend. The way God used these events, instead of, allowing them to destroy me, God used them to build me up to become the person that I am today. The very events that could have destroyed me, that could have traumatized me to the point of no recovery, he used them and brought me out of that to where I am today. I will explain and talk more about this in the later videos, but it's something that I really cannot comprehend. So we left. We started running again, running. as we reached on the other hand, in the other end of the bush near the sea, because we didn't want to go too far. So the Lake Tanganyika was like our reference as we ran. So we reached this point where someone told us that we could actually go back. We can go back because it's now safer. We're running away. Remember, we're running away from the border of Burundi, too far from the border of Burundi. And someone was telling us that it's safe now. We can run, running towards the border of Burundi so we can cross. Remember, in one of my previous videos, I mentioned that when the war broke, we were told not to run back to Burundi, towards the border, crossing into Burundi, because we will die. And we obeyed that. We did not take that route. So now, running back running back to the border of Burundi, as we approached, we were told that anybody who attempted to cross that border in the previous days died. They were all shot dead. Now we were walking towards the border, and there were just bodies. People got shot dead. We managed to cross the border peacefully. We entered Burundi. Remember, we left Burundi because there was war. We crossed to Congo, DRC, and yet there was another war that broke there that was even worse than the one we had seen previously in our country. So we decided that we would go back to Burundi because we thought it was better on the other side. When we arrived in Burundi, we were welcomed by a church, and they took us to a refugee camp, and we stayed there for quite some time. I have a lot of memories in this refugee camp. A place where we lived in a tent, a place where we were fed by the UN and different organizations that were coming, a place where we would get clothes from people who would bring clothes to help the refugees. We didn't have anything, including the pot that we would use to cook food. We were given that by various NGOs. The main one was the UNHCR. They were coming with the trucks, food and things. So we lived in that refugee camp for quite some time, and surprisingly, as I said, there was a lot of memories that I formed and created, that I had good memories in that place. We were not allowed to go far from the refugee camp because it was dangerous. So we were living in the one area, a small area. We could not cross and get out of that camp. So now I was starting to become more curious about life, and that's what I will talk about in the next episode. I'll be talking about my life in this refugee camp and how God started to pull me together despite what had happened previously.